reading characters before they went to primary school, my second and third. Whereas when you start primary school, the kids are learning in Pinyin. In Singapore, the first 2 years is a lot of Pinyin.
Yeah.
So people would ask me how my kids learnt to read or how they can read so well. And I think it was because we didn't ever look at the Pinyin. So I think learning to read without Pinyin was something great that didn't happen. It wasn't a deliberate decision that I made, but Lola has made that decision for us. And because we used Lola, we were lucky that we didn't have any Pinyin in there at all.
大家好，欢迎来到乐乐 Talk， 我是 Irene。如同片头所听到的，今天我们邀请到了住在新加坡的 Emma， 她经营拉拉 Banana 部落格。Emma 和她的先生都不会说中文，但他们竟然教出了3个爱看中文书的小书虫。大家一起来听听看她是如何做到的吧。
Hey, hello Emma, how are you?
Hi, Irene. Nice to talk to you today.
Could you please share some of your background for us?
Sure. So I'm from Australia. You might be able to tell from my accent. I've been living in Asia for about the last 20 years.
Wow.
My husband is ethnically Chinese, but also grew up in Australia. We met in Australia and he doesn't speak a word of Chinese. But that's something that we wanted to change for our kids. So got 3 kids. They're in primary school and we moved to Singapore to give them a head start in learning Chinese.
So could you please share, like, from birth, what did you do? So is this decision is from when they are born, or like you only speak English and change to Chinese? Like what?
Well, I can only speak English and so can my husband.
Yeah.
So we didn't have a choice of doing the one parent, one language, which is quite a common thing amongst bilingual families. When kids were born, I had a misinformed view that if I just put them into a Chinese immersion at infant care center or daycare center school environment, that they would pick it up from the teachers.
Yeah.
They did. I have to say that they did. So, when they were 2 years old and they're in nursery school, they could learn basic instructions from the Laoshi in their schools.
So when did they go to this infant school? Like how old were they?
They were 2. They're just on their second birthdays when they started in this school.
So before they go to the school, they were fully immersed in English environment. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, only English speaking. And then through nursery school, it was a bilingual environment. So they had a Chinese teacher. My eldest did this. She had a Chinese teacher and an English teacher. And she picked up a love for the language because I think the teachers are very playful, sing a lot of songs, do a lot of basic instructions around stand up, sit down, eating food, washing your hands, basic hygiene, everything like that she could learn in Chinese. And she had a great time there. But that can't last forever because when you start primary school, you're not in that. You've got many less hours in the day where you're talking to the teacher. The classes are much bigger. And so her language skills dropped off pretty fast after she turned 6 and was in primary school.
Okay, so when she is 6, how about the younger 2? Like how old were they? Are they in the same nursery school too? Or?
We actually did it differently because I realized that just putting them in a school environment wasn't going to make a difference. And then the second thing that happened was COVID came along. So even if we had wanted to do that, they probably wouldn't have got the closeness in the school that my other teachers had because it would have been my other kids had because it would have been online. But I think my second and third child really benefited because by that stage I'd understood the mistakes that we'd made with my elder daughter, and I also understood the resources that were available to change things up a bit and make sure that language skills that they were learning would be lifelong skills. And to me, a key part of that is reading in the language because it's much broader than just basic daily instructions.
Yeah, see, reading is so important because it can lose if you can't read, and just by, like you say, enter a school and then with less chance to expose to the language.
Yeah, and I mean, since then I've read quite a bit of literature around language theory and how someone develops language skills and the process that the brain goes through. And all the literature says unless you're in an immersion environment where people are talking to you all the time, you can become bilingual in an immersion environment, or you need to become bilingual through extensive reading because in a classroom environment you can't really catch a language.
That's it, yeah. But like with the extensive reading, their language, did you find they'll be able to speak more just through reading, right? Like they have a lot of content.
Yeah, it sounds counterintuitive, and I didn't believe it at the start either,
Mm-hmm.
because for me, not speaking any other language, and I see Chinese characters and they just look so incredibly hard to understand. So for me, I had this goal: if my child can speak Chinese, I'm happy with that. Then they can communicate, they can go to a restaurant, they can travel, they can make friends with people, get their point across. So that was my goal, really, only be able to speak the language. But I've since learned that if that's your goal, to speak the language, it's not going to work unless you can also read the language.
That's it. So it's good that you have this goal, but you need to get them to be able to read, so they all be continuously can speak, right?
Correct, because they get exposed to vocabulary that you wouldn't get in an everyday conversation, and particularly if we're talking classroom-based learning, the teacher uses the textbook to do a lot of the teaching as well. So again, if you can't read the textbook that the teacher's pointing you towards, 80% of that lesson is also lost as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So you can understand the teacher saying, open your book to page 88, but then you can't read page 88. So the reading from an early age in any language that you want to be able to be fluent in is important. And because we're not a Chinese speaking household, I'd also read about kind of that language gap that happens when your child is reading in the native language, and when you start off, you're just learning simple words, and you're on the same level as you might be as a child learning a second language. But pretty soon, when you're reading in your native language, you can read Harry Potter, and you can read the paper, and you're reading The Secret Garden and classics that are interesting, versus reading very basic Chinese books which don't have an interest, and then the child fully stops learning. So I wanted to ensure that their Chinese language for my second and third child got off to a head start ahead of the English.
That's it. So how's that doing now? Like with the Chinese reading ability is stronger than English, or how do you think?
Or for my third child, she's only just started primary school this year. Yes, her Chinese reading and writing are both stronger than her English. But for my first and second, my first is about to finish primary school. She's well ahead in English, and it has to be the case, because that's what I speak to her in. That's what her whole family talks.
I think you're already doing amazing. Like it's very hard to believe.
But from her school, from the academic perspective, in Singapore, the primary school exam in grade 6 is a very big year. And so you get a score for your 4 subjects: math, science, English, and Chinese, and it puts you in a secondary school. And actually her strongest of that mix is the Chinese.
Wow.
So just from a theory perspective, her Chinese is on par with her English, but she can read much more deeply and longer in English now.
But I think so like in her spare time, does she read in Chinese too?
She would have stopped about a year and a half back reading in Chinese, because we're at an interesting point where all the basic kind of bridging books she's read. She can probably read 2,000 characters or more, maybe even 3,000 characters, but it's just not enough to understand.
But I think it's okay. Maybe
there's a gap there. I haven't found that section of the library yet. I think I need to keep researching what that is. For now, it was just get your primary 6 exams over and done with, and we'll get to school holidays. And maybe after that, we'll find some classics. So there have been some good classics rewritten
in easier phrases.
Simplified Chinese that she's read. But there seems to be a limit to that universe that we've discovered so far.
Wow, very interesting. Well, just keep trying, because with my oldest son, I think he literally learns through, because he never goes to Chinese school, and he didn't attend like Chinese online class. But because anyway, we are Chinese speaking household. But he started really late to learn to read. But I found there's a long period of time I just let him read whatever comic book.
Graphic novels and comic books. That's what my daughter, she'll still read them. She'll very happily read them. For me, that's not really literature.
But I think with that, they gain the ability to continue reading, And then one day, because see, my son, he definitely spent more time reading Chinese graphic novels, and I found he gained the ability to read harder books. Yeah, so I think it's just a time of process, like maybe for a longer time she will start to see, oh well, I suddenly realize I can read these in Chinese too.
Yeah, I hope you're right. Because I know that with just the basic reading ability in Chinese, it did happen overnight. It went from being like, I don't think this is working, I don't think my child's understanding anything, to suddenly like, hey, they can read all the pages of the Lolo book just like that. So there's something in the brain that's forming, and then it happens.
It will happen. It will happen. And so what's the biggest challenges for you on this journey that you think?
Well, finding the resources has been a pretty big challenge, because there are a lot of resources, but they're either written for families that speak Chinese or can understand basic Chinese, or they're written for like a tourist that's just wants to know basic words, and or maybe an adult learner. I didn't find a lot of books or resources that were for a young child that was trying to learn to read or speak the language without a parent that could accompany them on the journey.
So how do you overcome these challenges? Like at the end,
I like to research a lot. So reading, talking to people, seeing what others do. I think that's been a challenge as well, because we're in Singapore. Most other families do. It's a great environment for learning Mandarin, but most families do have that as their mother tongue as well. So I think the expectations that if I ask them for help, they kind of assume firstly that my daughter probably won't ever learn Chinese that well, so they will point me towards some very basic resources. Or secondly, they'll think that I'm crazy and should just pay someone else to help my daughter, which is an expensive thing to do. So I was pretty keen to be able to be involved in the journey. I like to be hands-on with her and understand what she's reading, what she's learning, how I can help. And so finding resources that enabled a non-Chinese speaking parent to become involved, and by non-Chinese speaking, like totally zero language skills at all. Which is why like the Lolo books were great. There's some websites that are good. We've got some reading pans and some devices that will narrate books for us. So I think I slowly built up an understanding of resources that would help us in the journey.
So I'm curious. So like through this journey, it's like more than 10 years, right? How's your Chinese? How's your Chinese? Did you pick up something? Yeah, amazing.
Very small. I did promise my daughter this year that so we do some online Chinese classes as well. And I've for many years said, I wish I could speak Chinese. Oh, I'm too old. This is hard. If you show me characters like in a book, I recognize Xiao. Like I can't say them the right way, but I can. That's Xiao. That's Da. That's Hun. Because Mao. Like I can, because I've seen the kids reading it. And I sit down with them when they read, I can understand the basic shapes of some characters. So if they tell me, if they're reading, and particularly my youngest, if she's trying to be funny and say this is something else, I can be, no, I don't think that's right. Can you try again? So I can recognize characters without being able to pronounce it or kind of put it in a context.
But you know the meaning.
The meanings of like Fei, like that's often used in the books. I can I know most of the meanings. My kids will help me explain. So I'm a bit strange in that I can understand the grammar, I can know basic formations of the characters, but I cannot speak it. And my kids this year told me that I should take online classes myself to learn. My husband has just started this year, in fact.
Really? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I see with many families that I talk to, you see the biggest thing, I believe, is the mindset. Like earlier you say you feel like you're old, but if you believe that you can learn it, you're not old at any stage, because the rumor always say, oh, it's easier for kids to pick up language, but I believe everyone get this ability anytime, as long as you are ready. Like you tell yourself you're ready. This is something that you're going to do.
I hope you're correct, Irene.
No. I'm serious, because for myself, like the whole time, see in Korean, I can speak to friends. Like they have the respect way. I don't know what the proper English. Well, they have the respect way and the way that you speak with friends. And the whole time I can only speak with my husband or with my friend. And I'm very afraid to speak in front of foreigners. Like as in people I don't know. Like I need to use the respect way to speak to them.
Got you.
The whole time, like so every time in front of a Korean that I don't know, I'm always pretend I can't speak Korean, but I can understand what they're talking. And then because we go to the church in Australia, they are very friendly, and I start to open my mind to practice, and then suddenly clicking. Now I can speak to any Korean. I'm not afraid anymore.
I should draw inspiration from you as well in this. I need to open my mind more to the fact that the kids will always be better than me.
Because I believe
you
actually live sort of in immersed environment, right? Like, because they will speak Chinese to each other, right? Sometimes.
The kids will play little games in Chinese. They find it fun to talk, and I have no idea what they're saying.
Yeah,
but
I think your Chinese maybe is better than you imagine, than you thought.
I need to be brave and draw up the courage, perhaps.
Yeah, and then let me know how
I think
you
that
go.
point around offending people is an important one, though. Because like even Lao Shi and Lao Shu, I'm not have said that right, but like teacher versus mouse and things like that. That to me, if I call someone a mouse, it sounds quite offensive.
But I mean, see, if you don't, this is like the same case for me to speak in Korean. Don't worry about how other people think, because in our mind, when we see you can speak in Chinese, we're like, wow, she is amazing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about how other people think of you, and you just try. And even
maybe we need to do an interview in 2 years' time, and I'll
let's
show you what I've learned.
Okay. And so can you share with me what you see when the books go into your family, what the changes are? Or
so they were given to us the first series. So there's 3 series. The first series I had was given to us from a family friend, and they had said they'd used it. They had never used the reading pen with it, but they really liked the stories. And said, you should do it with your kids. They'll like the stories. And by the way, there's this reading pen, so we know that you won't be able to do it, but your kids can do it. And we had tried quite a few other books before, and I'd had trouble because even if it's got the pinyin underneath the characters, I mean, me reading out pinyin to the kid is not helping because it's pronounced completely incorrectly.
So did you learn the way to pronounce pinyin using the pinyin way, like a thing not using?
I sat for many times and like ba 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 ba, like trying, and I can't do it. Maybe again I need to open my mind, but it wasn't going to be a helpful way for me to teach the kids. So we've tried other ways where you scan a QR code and it reads the text out. It was too clunky. It needed my help. And when we got the Lolo book, it was like, my daughter can pick up the book. She's got a pen and puts it on the individual characters. I think that makes a difference. We had also tried some picture books where you tap. It's got a pen, but you tap it and it reads the whole page. So the child is hearing a story being narrated to them and enjoying it, but they're not getting any literacy skills from that. When you're actually physically looking at the word and just pointing at that one word with the pen, and it only reads that character, and then it moves on to the next one in a very slow and steady pace, which you get the pronunciation. You can do it at your own pace. You can re-click the character if you haven't heard it the first time. It's really intuitive way for a child, particularly a young child, to learn. I think my elder child was already at primary school when we had these, so she could recognize some of the characters already. So she could actually read maybe 3 out of 4 characters perhaps in the first set, and then just use the pen on the characters that she didn't know. And then what intrigued me was that so she was doing this having learned a little bit of reading and writing through school. My younger child at that point was 2, hadn't had any Chinese exposure at all at that point, and she was picking up the books and trying to imitate what the sister was doing and copying the movements, tapping the pen, and worked it out. And then she too was picking up she was reading but also learning the language at the same time. Which I thought, how can that be? She doesn't, no one's even using the language with her, and now she's trying to read sentences. It didn't compute, because I thought first you need to learn the basic of spoken
I know what you mean.
But it happened, and then maybe 6 months later, and then she can read whole books and tell me what they mean and laugh at the jokes at the end. So she could read when she was 2.
I have few parents that they say they have Lolo books, so they bought the books, and then they are keeping it away for a reason because they think a kid need to be able to read 500 characters later, and then they can start the book. How do you think about that?
So I know that's not the case because I watched my 2-year-old learn to read using the books without having had any other instructions in Chinese, and she certainly couldn't read 500 characters. The books are obviously graded, so you go from red to yellow to green. So I found finishing the red books took quite a while with a younger child because we would reread them. She was still learning just the meaning of the word itself rather than reading it, essentially. So we did that a few times. We read some other books and would come back to Lola. Whereas for my elder daughter, when she started it, she probably knew 500 characters when she started it. She sped through the red book very fast, but she still enjoyed them because she could read them most of them by herself without the pen. And then I knew we had to buy the rest of the set. So that's when I purchased the yellow and the green books, and we had the full set then, and she was able to finish them in about a year. I think she got through all 3 sets, whereas for my other 2, I'd say we've spent a year on each set.
Yeah, that's still a very good time frame, especially with like you not speaking Chinese at home. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, but
it's great
I think
to have helpful resources
with
like
with
that.
what you say, with your youngest spend longest time on red book, the author Kathy, she'll be very happy because most people think it's harder to write yellow and green, but it actually took her longer to complete red because there's only limited characters, like only 500 something characters, but she need to make it fun, make it relevant, and make it like with all different topics. So she always say that the hardest work to complete the red book.
I would believe that because there's something different around the way these books have been compiled versus other kind of learn to read Chinese level kind of kindergarten books that we get through school. They're not as the letters aren't as the characters aren't as thoughtfully curated, the stories aren't as funny. There's just something very engaging and endearing about these books. To the point now that I've started to think, even when my youngest one is about to finish, or she's finished the yellow, she's starting on the green, and then we'll be fully through all the books. The 3 kids will have been through the 3 set, and I don't know if I could pass them on. Like the family that gave them to me were so thankful that we had them and loved the books because they didn't want to part with them. And now I've got them. I think I have to think long and hard about who we pass these books on to, because I want someone else that's going to love them and use them as much as we have. They've been perfect for us.
Same with our family. The other day, I just spoke to another lady, and then I say, because some family will sell them to another family, like, but we were just saying no, we're keeping it for our grandchildren.
The pen's pretty heavy duty. I can imagine that the pen will keep working.
But I mean, don't worry. So see, I always tell families that are close to me, I say, don't worry about if the pen is not working. We'll try our best to help fixing, or like we do, try our best to support. And then sometimes I have some families say, oh, I'm so worried that my kids like damage the books, like like 300 books, and they get dirty, or there's marks on them, or they tear them, or and then we'll just say, if you missing book, let me know, then we can send you. Like if there's only few books missing or damaged, let us know. Could you please share, like, if you know a family now starts at the beginning, like say 10 years back, what advice would you give them?
I think you need the right resources, and you need a good routine, and reading would be part of that.
What's your
three R's that I
routine?
just come up with.
What's your routine?
What's our routine? We read every evening, both in Chinese and in English. And so it's the 3 kids, they do it at the same time, and I kind of spend a little bit of time with each of them. So we've got books that they can read by themselves, and books that they might need a little bit of help with me, and they'll read aloud. And I do that. Even my eldest, she's nearly 12 now, I do the same with her. She has to read aloud some things to me, and then other things she'll do by herself, and in Chinese and English. That's kind of the main part of the routine. Anything else is great to do, but the reading, we never give up on that.
Wow. That's amazing.
So with something that we noticed a real difference is my kids were reading characters before they went to primary school, my second and third. Whereas when you start primary school, the kids are learning in Pinyin. In Singapore, the first 2 years is a lot of Pinyin.
Yeah.
So people would ask me how my kids learned to read or how they can read so well. And I think it was because we didn't ever look at the Pinyin. So they're comfortable with identifying characters. They're not looking back at the Pinyin to try and use it as a bit of a crutch or read that.
Yeah.
Whereas the other kids, even though some of them came from fully Chinese speaking households, when they were taught to read, which was when they started school, they were taught to read in Pinyin first, which was at the same time that they were also learning to read in English and do phonics in English. So they were just very comfortable looking at the letters, and I guess they weren't thinking about the characters being there.
They maybe ignored it.
Maybe ignoring the characters.
Yeah.
And then you can read quite fast.
Yeah, that's right.
But and get the meaning. But if the characters are removed, if the Pinyin is removed, you're quite lost. So I think learning to read without Pinyin was something great that didn't happen. It wasn't a deliberate decision that I made, but Lola has made that decision for us. And because we used Lola, we were lucky that we didn't have any Pinyin in there at all.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think this is very important because that's what I found too. Like with so many families that we are reading together, once a family understands the Pinyin and Zhuyin is a crutch, and totally try to encourage kids to read more without Pinyin and Zhuyin, and we start to see kids thrive, like really enjoy reading and gain the ability and confidence in reading.
It works. I can tell you it works. And with 3 kids, it's not an accident either.
Yeah, see, this is really what give me goosebumps too. Like some people say, well, because your kids are clever, or this must be just like the case, but it's seriously no, right?
No. Yeah, I think if my kids were clever, they'd also be good at math and science. But they're pretty strong in Chinese, and that's about it.
Wow,
they're happy.
cool.
They're happy with their Chinese.
Yeah, wow, this is very inspiring, and thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. Thank you,
It's
Emma.
a pleasure, Irene. Talk to you another time.
Yeah, we'll do that. Thank you. Bye bye.
听完 Emma 的分享，非常好奇大家的想法，欢迎留言告诉我们你的心得，并分享给一起在努力的朋友。希望你们喜欢今天的分享，如果有收获的话，别忘了订阅我们的频道。那我们下次见喽，拜拜，爱你。